welcome to my channel where learning art is fun. I'm Sarah and in today's video I'm going to show you how I draw Peter Rabbit from the 2018 movie in colour pencil. So if you're ready, let's go. So here is a sneaky peek at how Peter Rabbit turned out, and just to mention that the items I used will be listed in the description box below. So I began this drawing with a light outline sketch on tan colour paper, and I really like using this paper for drawing with coloured pencil because it helps to show up the lighter, brighter areas, as you'll see as we go through the drawing. So in this video I'm going to speed up the colouring process because coloured pencil is quite a slow medium to work with. This whole picture took me nearly 3 hours. I'm going to talk you through the process though, so hopefully you might get a few hints and tips which you can use in your own colour pencil drawings. I did focus a bit more on rendering Peter Rabbit's denim jacket since colouring clothing was the topic of my quick tips video this week, and I was keen to show you how I apply the tips I talked about, as well as demonstrate how I add texture with colour pencil and the order that I do things in. If you want to know a bit more how about colouring in fur, I have got a video where I focus on Paddington's fur, so go and check that out. The main tips I would give you for working with coloured pencil is to firstly keep your pencils nice and sharp so you can get into all the tooth of that paper and get a nice even coverage. The second tip is to think about the direction you want your pencil strokes to go in and the length of the lines you are going to make when colouring fur. Aim to follow the direction of the fur and see the area it's growing in and the way it's growing, and use short pencil strokes for short hair and long pencil strokes for long hair. When filling in areas that require a smooth finish, use small circular motions which overlap to get a nice even coverage, without harsh zigzag lines which will be harder to blend later on. The third tip is not to press too hard on your pencil straight away. The best results are achieved by using lots of light layers, especially if you want to blend several colours together. I find that for Peter's fur I needed to use quite a few different colour pencils to get the colour of fur that I needed. Pressing too hard on your colour pencil, or burnishing as it's called, too early means you flatten out the tooth of the paper, and adding more layers after that is really a lot more difficult. You'll notice that I'm not using anything like baby oil or solvents to blend with today because I'm building up lots of layers which gradually mix and blend on the paper. Using solvents is a great way to get a smooth finish, and this method is really good if you're doing, say, skin or portraits. So my last tip for drawing fur would be to look at the fur in terms of clumps or sections. So don't try to copy exactly the placement of each individual hair from your reference picture. Instead, work on one section at a time and take a break if you need one. So moving on to colouring in Peter's jacket. The most important thing by far to ask yourself when drawing any sort of clothing is there a harsh line or edge? Because in most cases, when drawing bumps or wrinkles in fabric, there are no solid lines. And as tempting as it may be to draw them in at the beginning to map out the shaded areas, try and avoid doing this if you want the clothing to look realistic. That said, it is useful to map out the darkest areas first, but rather than using harsh solid lines, use small circular motions to build up those areas gradually. Of course, if there is a crease or fold in the fabric, a solid line might be needed, but just remember to ask yourself the question first: is this a solid line or just a shaded area? Once you've got these darkest areas down, it's time to shade in the other areas, remembering to leave the lightest areas light. If you forget to leave the lightest areas light, or you don't have enough contrast between the light areas and the dark areas, your clothing will end up looking a bit flat. But drawing clothing can be tricky, so don't be too hard on yourself if you don't get it right straight away. Practice on scrap paper or in a sketchbook, and remember, you don't need to do a whole picture. Just try small test pieces of the thing that you want to practice, so it might be fur, it might be clothing, or it might be something else. So once you've got those darkest areas in, it's time for the shading. So basically we're just going to add more layers to cover all that tan colour of the paper so it's not showing through. And I'm constantly checking to make sure that I keep those dark areas dark enough and the light areas light enough. again, remember to use a really sharp pencil, and that will help you get into all those nooks and crannies and all those folds and areas where you need to have a really dark contrasted area. And don't worry if you haven't got all the different blues or all the different shades that you want to. Remember, by varying the pressure you can change the colour and overall look that you get. And once you've finished that, then it's time to start the blending. So I'm going to use a paper stump, but if you don't have one of these, then you can use tissue or cotton buds as well. So it may surprise you to realise that you can blend colour pencil like this, but the main thing to know is not to scrub with your blender or use zigzag lines back and forwards, because this might end up with like a really streaky effect and lines on your paper where you don't want them. Try using the side of your blending tool, but if you've got lots of light layers, you shouldn't need to apply a lot of pressure anyway. If you do lose any of the depth of your colouring through blending, because this can sometimes lighten up some areas, you can go back in and touch up some of these areas again before adding any texture or pattern. So we're almost done now, and the last thing to do is to add the texture and the pattern. So it may surprise you to learn that this part is best left till the end, but it's far easier to do at the end than get cross and fed up with it in the beginning, when you're also trying to focus on shading the lights and the darks and all those other things that we talked about. So Peter's jacket is denim, and denim has quite a characteristic look to it. So I would suggest looking back at your reference picture and observing it closely. You may need to lift or lighten crinkles in the fabric, and this can be done with a white colour pencil or an eraser, and that depends on whether you're using coloured paper or white paper. You may also need to increase the contrast by putting darker colours in next to these lighter areas. This will help to make the fabric look like it has dips and bumps in it. And try not to make these creases too straight or too evenly spaced apart, because it won't look real then. You don't need to copy exactly every line and crease and fold, but just try to mix it up and vary the direction of these creases to make it look more realistic. So you can see how the darker areas sink back and the lighter areas lift up. With denim also, it is not smooth like silk, for example, so we don't need to blend it so it's super smooth. A bit of texture is good with this particular fabric. Also remember that if you've got buttons or buttonholes or anything like that, that you shade those areas dark enough as well. So this is the home stretch, so you may be getting tired, but it's always good to take regular breaks with colour pencil drawings so you aren't tempted to rush to the finish line, because then that would risk ruining all your hard work. But with a last touch of white gel pen, this finished picture is complete. Well, that's all for today, Artcadets. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you did, don't forget to give it a like, comment and subscribe to my channel, and let me know in the comments box as well what you thought of the new look intro. I'll see you next week. Bye!